Thanks for joining me on A Toast to Brews. My name is Jake Riley, and today we will be toasting non-alcoholic beers, specifically those made by Sierra Nevada. So I am not doing dry January, but we were in the grocery store and they had excellent product placement for this right next to the checkout counter. So straight impulse buy, I thought I would give it a shot. Because non-alcoholic beers have come a long way over the past several years, and although I don't do dry January or anything, I do have a lot of friends that do. I know a lot of people are, and I thought it would be interesting to try these and see what they're all about. So one interesting caveat, non-alcoholic beers are not necessarily non-alcoholic. They are required by law to have less than 0.5% of alcohol, and so there are alcohol-free beers out there as well, and they'll typically say alcohol-free, and those should have zero alcohol content in case that matters to you. Non-alcoholic beers can be brewed a couple different ways. You can brew it so that the final product just has a lower alcohol content, or you can brew it and then remove some alcohol at the end, either through like a low pressure kind of evaporation boiling of the alcohol or a filtration process. So what Sierra Nevada does is they have a yeast strain that they've developed that doesn't ferment most of the sugars in the malt that to alcohol. And it took them a while to figure this out because yeast doesn't just turn sugars into alcohol. Yeast also is responsible for cleaning up a lot of the compounds that can cause off flavors in beer. So they had to find a strain that still does all of that stuff, but doesn't ferment the same sugars the same way. But they found one that they're pretty happy with, and so they've made non-alcoholic beers for a while. The IPA and the Golden have been around for a bit, but the Hazy and the Brewveza are relatively newer, and since they were all four in a variety pack, I thought it would be really fun to just give these a try and see how they turn out. So, on that note, we'll get these poured out. So first up is the Golden. As expected, that is a nice golden yellow color, golden yellow can. The Brewveza is a blonde ale with a little bit of lime, and that looks like it's a little bit lighter in color. Up next we've got the Hazy, and that does look hazy. And they definitely smell like beer so far, so I think we're off to a good start. And last but not least, we've got the IPA. Okay. I'll give those a minute to settle, and apparently I didn't do as good of a job washing these as I thought. We're getting a few bubbles there, so these aren't quite beer clean glasses, but they'll get the job done. So yeah, that's really light yellow, light golden color. Smells slightly sweet, slightly malty. And it's surprisingly good. It is a little bit on the sweeter side. It's really light, it's really crisp, a little bit smooth, but I think part of that is the sweetness too. It's not overly sweet, but there's just kind of a little bit of sweetness throughout. Yeah, I'm not getting a lot of fruit flavor or anything. I mean, I'd say it's kind of similar to drinking like a domestic lager, but with a bit more flavor. So it's not maybe quite what I'm used to for a golden ale, but it's not bad. So if hops aren't your jam, if you like something a little bit sweeter that just goes down really easy, I think the golden ale would be a really good option. Brewveza is a blonde, and all of these are ales. None of them are lagers. And you can definitely smell the lime right away. It's very lime forward. It's smoother than I expected. It's not quite as crisp, but it's very limey, just a little bit of sweetness. I think kind of what they were going for is like a Mexican lime lager, so kind of that feel, but maybe not quite as crisp or something as like a Bud Light lime. It's a little bit sweeter, but it's definitely very lime forward. So yeah, I think if you're looking for something fruitier that doesn't necessarily taste strongly of beer, then this would be a really good option. It's still really good. I wish it was a little bit more crisp, um, which is interesting. I was looking at these on Untapped, and one of the descriptors for that one, it had both crisp and flat, which are kind of both ends of the spectrum, but I could see why people would say both of those. So that's interesting. Up next is the Hazy, and that is very hazy. Kind of a light gold color. I mean, it smells like a Hazy IPA. Very hoppy, a little fruity. Grapefruit dominates this one with a bit of pine and kind of that hop flavor at the end. That's kind of the finish. It's a little bitter. There's not much sweetness to this. It's a little lighter in body than I would expect from a hazy IPA. And I mean, even though it is hazy, like it doesn't have that juiciness that's present in a lot of them. It's still kind of light, which I think is kind of the theme in all these. And I don't know if that's just the way it's brewed or the yeast, but they're all a little bit lighter in body than I expected, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Grapefruit, good bitterness. Maybe a little bit of tropical fruit, but it's definitely kind of grapefruit and pithy and a little piney. That's pretty good. And last but not least is the IPA. It smells hoppy. This one might actually be my least favorite so far. It's hoppy, but there's just not the malt there that you would expect in an IPA. It's really light. There's a good amount of fruit. It's like tropical a little bit, a mix of citrus, a little lemony, a little grapefruit. Yeah, a little bit of pine, but I also get like almost a little bit of butteriness at the end. Yeah, so I mean, it's not bad. I'm a bit of an IPA snob, so I like it to really punch me in the face with citrus and pine, and that's not quite there in this. And then the body's just a little bit lighter. So overall, though, I think they're all really good. I've definitely had worse beers with alcohol in them. The Golden Ale is pretty good. It's a little sweet. The Brewveza, very lime forward. The Hazy IPA I think was my favorite. That's kind of got the most complex flavors, very fruit forward, with a little bit of pine in there. And then the Trail IPA, the Trail Pass IPA is lighter but hoppier than kind of the rest of the offerings, but without so much of the fruit of the hazy. But yeah, definitely, they all go down really easy. You could drink a lot of these. These would be great in the summer, not just during dry January, but if you're outside and want to take a break from some alcohol while you're playing some games or something. Really impressed. Really excited to see kind of other non-alcoholic beers out there. But I think they did a really good job. So I know there's a ton of other brands out there as well. Athletic is one that you'll see a lot of breweries. A lot of breweries also do things like hop water, which I'm a bit more of a fan of. It's like a seltzer, but it has that hop flavor. It's a bit lighter, because if I'm gonna drink a beer, it might as well have alcohol, but if I want something non-alcoholic, I do like a mocktail or a seltzer or, like I said, big fan of hop water. One quick caveat, fully support dry January. If that's your jam, go for it. It's always nice to take a break. Everything in moderation, including moderation. But a lot of small local breweries do operate on pretty tight margins. And so if you are doing dry January and you're usually, going to breweries and patronizing those. Consider other ways you can support them during this time. Whether they do have non-alcoholic versions or whether they serve food, maybe go there for that. Still go for a trivia night or something. Kind of support them in that way, and then maybe consider picking up some beer for that February 1st if you're gonna crack one open that soon. But definitely, we want to see the breweries that we really like not struggle and continue to provide us with great options, both alcohol and alcohol free. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're doing dry January, and help support our local craft beer industry. So with that, thank you very much for joining me. Let me know what you think, and if anybody else has any favorite non-alcoholic beers, drop those in the comments. I'd be really curious to see what else other people have tried and what's really good and what's maybe not quite so good. So until next time, cheers, and thank you very much.